Can you imagine a place where the color of your car is decided by the government, where ballet and opera were deemed unnecessary and banned by law, a place where the calendar was rewritten and the month of April was renamed in honor of the president's mother? This isn't the script of a dystopian sci-fi movie. This is Turkmenistan, a real country that exists right now in the 21st century. Located in Central Asia, squeezed between Iran, Afghanistan, and the Caspian Sea, Turkmenistan holds the 6th largest natural gas reserves on the planet. It's a wealth that could guarantee a prosperous life for its roughly 6.5 million inhabitants. But instead, that fortune has been used to build one of the most bizarre, closed-off, and controlling dictatorships the world has ever seen. Welcome to Complex Planet Channel. Today, we're going to get a tiny glimpse inside this nearly sealed-off country to understand how an orphan of the Soviet era turned himself into a living god, how his dentist successor became a pop star and DJ, and how power now passes from father to son. This is the story of Turkmenistan's authoritarian dynasty and its gilded marble prison. To understand today's Turkmenistan, we first need to meet the man who shaped it in his own image, Saparmurat Niyazov. Niyazov's story is marked by tragedy. Born in 1940, in the middle of World War II, he lost his father on the front lines. The most devastating blow came in 1948. A cataclysmic earthquake, measuring more than 7.3 on the Richter scale, simply wiped out the capital, Ashgabat, killing more than 110,000 people. Among the victims were Niyazov's mother and his 2 brothers. At 8 years old, he was completely alone. Raised in a Soviet orphanage, he became a model product of the system, disciplined, loyal, and ambitious. He climbed the ranks of the Communist Party in Turkmenistan, which at the time was just one of the 15 socialist republics of the Soviet Union, a mostly desert region that supplied gas and cotton to Moscow. In 1985, he reached the top, becoming first secretary of the local Communist Party. And then, in 1991, the world changed. The Soviet Union collapsed. For Niyazov, this wasn't a crisis, but the opportunity of a lifetime. On October 27, 1991, Turkmenistan declared its independence. Niyazov, who already controlled the power structure, held an election with no opposition and became the country's first president. He then gave himself the title Turkmenbashi, the father of all Turkmen, and began building a cult of personality that reached surreal levels. News outlets such as The Guardian and the BBC reported extensively on the omnipresence of his image. Portraits of Turkmenbashi appeared on every banknote, every bottle of vodka, but he went far beyond portraits. In Ashgabat, the capital, he built the Arch of Neutrality, a 75-meter monument topped by a 12-meter-tall gold-plated statue of himself. As reported by Reuters, this statue was mechanized and rotated 360 degrees throughout the day, so that it always faced the sun. He was a self-proclaimed sun god, watching over his creation. However, the centerpiece of his cult was a book, the Runama, or Book of the Soul. This was not just any book. It was a mix of autobiography, historical revisionism, dubious poetry, and moral rules that Turkmenbashi declared to be as sacred as the Quran. Runama became compulsory reading for the entire nation. It was the main subject in every school, from primary level to university. To get a driver's license, you had to pass a test on the teachings of the Runama. Civil servants were forced to study it every week. Turkmenbashi even claimed that anyone who read his book 3 times would be blessed with wisdom and granted a direct path to paradise. Through a Russian rocket, he even launched a memorial capsule into space in 2005 carrying a copy of the book, so that his wisdom could be transmitted to the entire universe. He wasn't just building a country, he was manufacturing an entire reality, with himself at the center as son, prophet, and father. And to house that reality, he needed a stage worthy of it. He needed a capital that reflected his self-proclaimed divine grandeur, which brings us directly to the city of Ashgabat. If Turkmenbashi was the director of this bizarre play, Ashgabat was his stage. A city that holds a Guinness World Record for having the highest concentration of white marble buildings in the world. We're talking about more than 540 buildings clad in 4.5 million cubic meters of marble imported from Italy. An entire city that gleams under the desert sun, a spectacle of opulence that cost billions and billions of dollars. As the Diplomat magazine points out, this extravagance is funded directly by the country's vast natural gas revenues. The architecture here is not just grand, it's symbolic and often literal. The Ministry of Education is shaped like an open book. The Ministry of Oil and Gas looks like a giant lighter. The international airport, inaugurated in 2016, is shaped like a falcon in flight, a national symbol, and cost more than $2.3 billion. The city is impeccably clean, a surreal sight in the middle of the Karakum Desert that surrounds the capital. The streets are wide, with 6 or even 8 lanes, perfectly paved and lined with golden lampposts. There are monumental fountains at every roundabout and huge parks that seem to stretch on for kilometers. At night, Ashgabat turns into a neon light show, with entire buildings changing color in psychedelic patterns. It's a display of power and wealth designed to impress, to show the world, and above all, its own people, the grandeur of the regime. It's a perfect stage, almost too perfect. And that's where the strangeness really begins. Because when you look more closely at this monumental set, you realize that something crucial is missing: the people. For a capital city with nearly 1 million inhabitants, Ashgabat is eerily quiet. The vast avenues are almost always empty, the huge parks and squares deserted. It's a feeling described by almost every one of the few foreigners who manage to get into the country. The travel site adventure.com describes the experience as walking through an immaculate, post-apocalyptic movie set. That sense of emptiness is no accident. It's a symptom of Turkmenistan's extreme isolation. The country is often compared to North Korea in terms of how secluded it is. Getting a tourist visa is a notoriously difficult and expensive process, usually requiring the visitor to be accompanied at all times by a state-appointed guide who monitors every step and every conversation. The UK government, in its official travel advice, warns about the strict official supervision that foreigners are subject to. This isolation is, above all, for the domestic audience. The regime wants to control what the Turkmen people see of the outside world, and, more importantly, what the outside world sees of the Turkmen people. And the control of information is absolute. Imagine living in a country where access to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube is completely blocked, where messaging apps like WhatsApp and Telegram don't work. That is everyday reality in Turkmenistan. The government keeps an iron grip on the internet. The organization Reporters Without Borders consistently ranks Turkmenistan as one of the worst countries in the world for press freedom, describing it as an information black hole. Internet access is extremely slow, expensive, and heavily monitored. Only a small fraction of the population has access to a censored global network, and the use of VPNs, virtual private networks, to bypass the blocks is illegal and can lead to interrogations by the secret police. All media, newspapers, radio, television is state-owned. Newscasts do not show the world's problems or criticism of the government. Instead, they broadcast endless footage of the current president, Serdar Berdimuhamedow, son of the previous president, attending ceremonies, inaugurating buildings, riding akalteke horses, or composing songs. It is a constant stream of positive propaganda, creating an information bubble in which the leader is perfect and the country is a paradise. This total control is not limited to information. It extends to the most basic rules of daily life, turning existence into a minefield of arbitrary and bizarre prohibitions. Under Turkmenbashi's rule, Turkmenistan became a laboratory for a dictator's whims. The laws he implemented were so absurd, they sound made up. In 2001, he banned opera, ballet, and the circus, claiming they were non-Turkmen. He forbade news anchors from wearing makeup because he thought they were already attractive enough. Lip-syncing at concerts was banned in the name of preserving true culture. Gold teeth were discouraged. Turkmenbashi suggested people chew bones to strengthen their teeth. Young men were not allowed to have beards, and long hair was prohibited. He even redesigned the calendar. January was renamed Turkmenbashi in his own honor. April, as we've seen, was renamed after his mother. September was renamed after his sacred book, the Runama. Although some of these more eccentric laws were rolled back after Turkmenbashi's death in 2006, the system of social control stayed firmly in place. The obsession with aesthetic uniformity continued. Around 2015, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedow banned all black cars from Ashgabat because he believed the color white brings good luck. Police simply towed away any dark-colored vehicle they found on the streets. In the capital, it's not enough to have white marble buildings. Many constructions, especially in planned residential complexes, are required to have green roofs. Green is the sacred color of Islam and the dominant color of the national flag. It's yet another way of enforcing a totalitarian visual identity, where every detail, from the color of your car to the color of your roof, is an expression of state power. Turkmenistan's economy is a state-run fiefdom. Beyond gas and oil, which account for more than 90% of exports, the country has a textile industry focused on cotton, a Soviet legacy maintained through forced labor according to reports by Human Rights Watch, and a construction sector inflated by government contracts. But what about business owners? The rich? In Turkmenistan, there is no such thing as free entrepreneurship. The billionaires aren't innovators. They're members of the political elite or relatives and friends of the president who receive overinflated contracts to build the marble palaces, stadiums, and hotels we see. It's a system where loyalty to the regime is the only path to wealth. Ordinary citizens without connections don't stand a chance. While the ruling elite lives in a world of luxury, the reality for most Turkmen people is very different. Outside the marble bubble of Ashgabat, infrastructure is poor and poverty is a fact of life. The Borgen Project, an organization that fights global poverty, points out that despite the country's resource wealth, it faces problems such as unemployment and limited access to clean drinking water in rural areas. The economy is fully centralized and notoriously inefficient. Inflation is rampant, and there are frequent reports of shortages of basic foodstuffs such as flour and cooking oil. Long lines in front of state-run shops are a common sight, something the official propaganda never shows. The gas wealth that should be a blessing has become a curse. It allows the regime to sustain itself without relying on a productive economy or on taxes from the population. The government doesn't need its people to generate wealth, so it doesn't feel the need to answer to anyone. Money flows directly from the pipelines, mainly to China, into state coffers, funding more palaces, more golden statues, and a brutal security apparatus to keep the population under control. And for the few who manage to navigate this system, there is a parallel economy that reveals the country's true situation. There are two exchange rates, the official one and the real one. The official rate, fixed by the government, is artificially overvalued. In 2024, for example, $1 officially bought about 3.5 manats. However, on the black market, the only place where most people can actually buy hard currency, $1 can be worth 5, 6, or even 7 times more. This huge gap shows the true health of the economy. For ordinary citizens, it means their salaries in manat are worth very little. For travelers, it means that paying for something with a credit card at the official rate is absurdly expensive, while exchanging cash on the parallel market makes the country surprisingly cheap. This underground economy is a reflection of the daily struggle to survive. It's a system where distrust of the government is so deep that people are forced to operate outside its rules just to put food on the table. Niyazov's successor was his personal dentist, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedow. At first, there was hope for openness. He reversed some of the most absurd laws, like the modified calendar, and removed the Runama from the center of the education system. But he quickly traded the cult of Niyazov for a cult of himself. He declared himself Arkadag, or the Protector, and his personality cult came with a new twist, that of a man of action and many talents. State TV showed him winning horse races, even after falling off his horse in an incident the government tried to cover up, lifting golden dumbbells, shooting targets with surgical precision, and in the most surreal moments, writing and singing pop songs, rapping with his grandson and acting as a DJ at New Year's parties. He ruled with the same iron fist as his predecessor for 15 years. And in 2022, he did what modern dictators do to cement their power. he created a dynasty. In an obviously rigged election, his son, Serdar Berdimuhamedow, became the new president. Serdar is more low-key. There are no rap videos or DJ sets. Propaganda presents him as a serious, focused bureaucrat. But the nature of the regime hasn't changed. Repression continues, the internet remains blocked, and control is absolute. The father, Gurbanguly, did not retire. He took on a new powerful role as leader of the nation and remains the gray eminence behind the throne, making sure that wealth and power stay in the family. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Every week there's a new episode about the most beautiful and contradictory places on the planet. Thanks so much for watching and see you in the next video.